Hi there everyone, it's Joe and welcome to Kuja's monthly review. Once again we'll be looking at some of the higher or the rising cards in the format and some of the falling cards in the format so that you guys can get an idea of the sorts of things that you might be coming up against or might see as a bit of a dark horse in the coming weeks. And, you know, July's been a bit of a crazy month, to be fair. It's quite difficult to be able to do an awful lot on July because we've just had a new set released on the tail end of it. And obviously the meta and the format has completely changed up because of it. So I'm trying to focus primarily on cards that are in Opus 1 and 2 for this particular video. There might, you know, a bit of Opus 3 might crop up, you don't know. Anyways, we're going to start with the rising cards of the format, and honestly, the first one that's here I don't actually agree with, and it's Terror. I've been looking at a lot of ice decks recently. A new Kuja's just come out, I have to run ice, it's just the way the world wants me to be. But loads of them have been running a lot of Terror recently, and I don't think Terror is bad, I don't. But Terror's been cropping up a lot recently, I think because people are thinking that in combination with White Tiger, Lassie, Kunmi, it'll be really difficult to play summons and things like that. And I understand that. It is a nice little combination, and it is, you know, and she's not particularly bad. The fact that she's untargetable by summons is also very nice. But I think that she kind of feels unnecessary. To me, I think Kunmi kind of covers that job very well already. So I think that, you know, having Terror in the format is very useful, but it's not necessarily a card that I would play. If you disagree with me or any of the cards that are on this video, then feel free to leave a comment in the comments below and, you know, let me know what you think, because I'm always happy to have discussions about these things, because I know I'm not necessarily right. Loads of people are running this card, and just because I don't want to, it doesn't mean that they're wrong. And then another card that's under ice that's been doing a lot of work recently, and I can see doing even more come over, like with the Opus 3 format, is Vayne. Vayne is a very good anti-meta card. Very good. Its ability shuts things down. Or his ability, it. But Vayne in the coming months is going to be very popular, purely because a lot of the focal points of Opus 3 are 5 CP units. Things like Deleter, Zac, Prish, God forbid anyone run the new Prish. There's a lot of cards that are very high costing in this set, and there's a lot of focus on it. Minerva is another good one. Or Feral Chaos is another very good one. And they're none of them are safe from Vayne. If they get one of these guys down and then you just go Vayne, they have to answer your Vayne before you can do anything. So it makes absolute sense that Vayne is going to see much more play coming up soon, because a lot of these units are very good as well, except Prish. I'm not entirely sure why I even mentioned her, to be honest. Okay, so one card in this video that is going to be from Opus 3 is a Legendary Aerith. Now, Legendary Aerith doesn't look like much when you look at her. She looks kind of like, oh, okay, that's kind of good, but, you know, why is she a Legendary? Now, the fact of the matter is there's a very good reason why she's Legendary, and it's because the amount of things that target your forwards with backups would absolutely shock you. It shocked me. Like, I didn't see it coming until like I'd started playing with the cards and sort of thinking about it. Like, I built an Earth-Wind deck fairly recently that ran 1 copy of Aerith, and I would honestly consider boosting her up to 2, because having played that deck, I've realised that the amount of things that it shuts off is actually quite large. You know, fire decks use Red Mage almost unanimously. Like, that card is in every fire deck. You know, Earth decks use Ralbarn almost unanimously. There's a lot of, like, lightning decks can't target you with Black Mage. You know, water decks, I don't know what water decks use that target your forwards, they usually target their own. But you get my point. There's a lot of things that are very prominent in Final Fantasy TCG that just get shut down entirely by Aerith, which means that they're going to have to destroy her first. So the Hecatons and Archers might start coming out to play, because this card is actually very strong. And then the next card is an Earth card that's going to see on the rise, and it's again due to the sorts of things that we're seeing a lot of in Opus 3, and it's Guy. Guy is like the biggest anti-dull card there is, because you can't really not do it. The only way to be able to dull him is to either turn his effect off or have an Ultimecia down before he gets there. And that's not good enough, honestly. Guy is just a very strong card. He's way on curve by having 8k and Brave for 4 CP, so he's just a good attacker anyway, so there's no reason not to be running him right now. He, you know, with Genesis and Kuja on the rise, or looking like they're going to be on the rise from Opus 3, and Amon is getting a lot more play recently as well because of his synergy with cards like Genesis and Kuja, you know, Guy is definitely a card that people want to be keeping an eye on. And then lastly, the last card I wanted to talk about on the rise is actually Backup Waka. Now, Backup Waka was always an issue when it came to being the power booster for water. The reason for that is because one of Water's best forwards was Waka, and that made things very difficult. Like, you couldn't justify running the backup Waka to boost Water forwards by 1,000 because you really wanted to run the forward one instead. Now with Opus 3, there are enough good forwards for Water that make it so that you don't have to run Waka anymore, so you can warrant running this one. Is Waka a bad card? Absolutely not. Waka is still absolutely amazing. He's still a fantastic card, but the option is definitely there now because of cards like Theodore, Ash, Queener, Steiner, things like that. There's a lot of really solid Water forwards in Opus 3 that broaden your options a great deal. So it's definitely worth keeping an eye on that. Water Wind decks might forego Waka now in order to play this one so that they can have the extra power boosters. They might not because a lot of their power is in their Wind forwards, but it's just something worth bearing in mind. Now moving into the cards that I haven't seen been doing so much recently, and the first of this is actually an Opus 3 card, and I'm kind of shocked by it. I'm shocked and I'm not surprised at the same time, because I'm going to just quickly come out and say it's Ultima. Now Ultima is a very strong summon, very strong, but I've not seen anybody using it, including myself. I just can't find room for this card. Like, I mean, playing Wind and Earth, obviously I'm playing things like Shantotto and Valifor, but Ultima just doesn't seem to fit anywhere because in order for you to capitalise on it, you need to have another light forward out. So if you're running your Clouds and Warrior of Light, etc., or even Zidane, you know, you kind of want to have that presence there and to make her that much cheaper as well. But because you're running 3 copies of a light card and Ultima, you know, in the little testing I've done with Ultima, I haven't done that much in all fairness, but I'm sure other people are finding it as well because in all the deck lists I've seen across Europe and stuff like that recently, no one seems to be running her. And there must be a reason for that. I think it's because your hand gets really cloggy. Like, because you can't discard Ultima if you have no use for her. Like, there's nothing, she's just dead in your hand. Your only options are to run a Moogle to discard it, or to run Huge to put it to the bottom of your deck, and even then it might come back. So honestly, I can understand why people aren't using Ultima, but that effect is still very, very powerful, so it's definitely something that maybe you could sneak into a game, and that's the reason that I'm telling you this, is because, you know, if no one's playing it, be the first person to play it, because you'll catch people off guard. The second card that I want to talk about for falling cards is actually Dark Knight, and this is more of a generalization. It's not necessarily Dark Knight specifically that's not seeing play, it's the entire kind of game plan of hurting yourself in order to boost the power of your units, or to use for Sawyer, for example, to damage your opponent's forwards and things like that. Gabranth and all of that kind of, that core mechanic is not seeing as much play as it once did. I've played that mechanic and I still think it's very, very good, especially now with, you know, with so much power that you have in Earth. You have Atomos, which can capitalise on your units just being huge. You have your Rabans, and obviously with Aerith having been spoken about already, you need other means for power in Earth. So I think that, you know, having the, you know, the massive power of the forwards of the Dark Knights is still a good thing. But I just wanted to note on the fact that I haven't seen an awful lot of it recently, and again, I think it's because people are too worried about the fact that obviously hurting yourself in order to boost your power leaves you vulnerable to something like a quick Genesis or something like that. You're just like, oh no, dull, freeze, you're dead. You're like, and I get that. So it's like, you know, maybe again, it's something that you might want to bear in mind for the future. Now the next card is an Ice card, and honestly Ice has just been all over the place these past few weeks and in the next couple of weeks, because people are obviously planning all of their Ice decks and stuff over Opus 3 and all these things like that, and some things are getting left to the wayside, and one of those cards is actually Renoa. And having looked at people's deck lists, I haven't seen any Renoas recently, which is really shocking because Renoa is a really good card. But, you know, I think because people are kind of wanting to mix it up with the Time Mages, the Genesis, the Kuja, there's all sorts of things in that you want to run. I know I've mentioned Genesis and Kuja a lot, but a lot of people are kind of building around that kind of dull and freeze mechanic, but they're doing it in a more aggressive way, which is why I think Renoa's fallen to the wayside, because Renoa is pretty much strictly a defensive card. You never really want to attack with Renoa because you want your opponent to attack her. So I think that Renoa is kind of like the poster child for the passive Ice decks, like Opus 1 Kuja and Renoa and Squall and things like that. Like, you don't really attack very much. Whereas in light of the new cards coming out, then it's becoming a lot more aggressive. So people are kind of like putting Renoa to the back burner so that they can run different 3 CP units instead. So, you know, maybe bear it in mind that maybe the defensive plays could still come into vogue and stuff, because if people are being more aggressive, then there's no reason why Renoa might not be very good. But there's no reason why Renoa might not be very good, sorry. You know, Astrologian I think would be very important if you are going to run Redoa though, because obviously if everyone else is running Dud and Freeze mechanics, then you want a way to, well, reactivate her and make it so that she can actually do things. The next card on this list honestly has kind of just fallen off completely, and this one I completely agree with, if I'm honest, and it's Bahamut. With cards like White Tiger Lassie coming around, Bahamut is just not going to hit anything. It's just not. You know, you'd be paying 15 to target 2 guys with Bahamut, and it's just not feasible. So I think that because Bahamut, you know, and you also, like, Deleter is one of the most popular cards in this set, which if you hit him with that, you're going to take a point of damage, and therefore you've paid 9 CP and you've taken damage to deal with Deleter and something else. It's a lot to pay nowadays. It's a lot. And with cards like Ultima coming around, if Ultima's not seeing that much play, then honestly I don't see why Bahamut would. Bahamut isn't bad in certain matchups, but I think because of the way the game has evolved, Bahamut has just kind of fallen behind, and it's, you know, it would be nice to see him crop back up again. If you're playing Bahamut again, leave a comment and, you know, argue with me if you want, and just say like, oh no, this is why I think Bahamut is good. But I'm giving you my reasons as to why I think it's quite plain to see why he's not seeing as much play as he used to. And then the last card that I want to talk about today is Kefka. Now, Kefka is actually amazing. Really good card, but it's a 4 CP backup, and Earth has so many good 4 CP backups now that it's so hard to justify running Kefka, because Kefka doesn't have an enter the play effect, it doesn't have a kind of, you know, it requires other cards in order for you to actually capitalize on it, and those cards are going to die. And because Earth's primary function now is to play cards like Vincent and Deleter, who you want to stay on the board as much as possible, Kefka doesn't actually play as well as he used to. But I do still think it's a really good card, and again, it comes under very much like the Dark Knight thing, or the, you know, the kind of self-sacrifice decks that, you know, that were more popular in Opus 2. I think that Kefka is still a really good card, but I think you need to pair it with things that generate card advantage. I'd like to see Kefka being played alongside the Final Fantasy IX draw engine, because I think that it could be a really nice way of keeping your hand up, keeping your board present, and then still being able to smack your opponent about. And because of things like Ralbarn getting written off by Aerith, you never know, like, this could be a really nice kind of curveball in your Earth deck. So don't write off Kefka, because I do think he's very good. But yet again, I wanted to point out the fact that in a lot of Earth decks I've seen recently, he's just not getting played. So generally speaking, as I said at the beginning of the video, it's very difficult to tell where the format is going to go with the release of Opus 3. But from what I can tell, and in the testing that I have done, it seems like we're coming away from the 4 CP forward era and more into the 3 and 5 CP era, because a lot of the cards that are featured Opus 3 are one of those 2 costs, whether it be something like Kuja, which I hate to keep going on about because it's the first one that pops into my head and I'm sorry, or Deleter, and things like him, or Feral Chaos. You know, I think that we need to be able to prepare for those kinds of cards, and I think that, you know, going forward, summons that target aren't going to be nearly as powerful because of things like Deleter and White Tiger Lassie. There you go, there's a 5 and 3 CP unit that work perfectly together. You know, I think that in order to be able to go forward, you want things that have blanket effects and don't target, or things that single things out in a different way, like Matthias or Famfrit, things like those. But yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see what people come up with, and it'll be interesting to see where the format goes. So if you have any ideas or things that you disagree with on this video or anything like that, then leave a comment below. And thank you very much for watching again, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I love you for it, I always do. And as I said, I'll leave all my links to social media in the description box. So thanks again, I'll speak to you soon. Bye.